Welcome to the Breakup Recovery Podcasts by your host, Barbara Stevens. Discover the wisdom and remarkable insights of Barbara Stevens, breakup recovery mentor, author, and public speaker. Barbara offers programs and solutions for any breakup so you can turn your life around, create lasting changes for the better, and embrace life again.
Hello and welcome to Breakup Recovery Podcast. I'm Barbara Stevens and I'm a breakup recovery mentor, and this is episode number 089. Today we are going to talk with Rosalind Sadaka about how people can co-parent together for the benefit of themselves and the children, and how to live in harmony in a blended family situation. We will also explore what are the pitfalls and consequences if parents can't get their act together and co-parent. So welcome back, Rosalind.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
So how do parents, after they have divorced and broken up with their partner, make co-parenting work for everybody involved?
Well, as you can imagine, it isn't always easy, but it's doable, and it's an important thing that two mature adult parents do because they both love the children involved, and that's the key. So the secret is cooperation, learning how to cooperate in every possible way on behalf of the children, because otherwise you would have nothing to do with each other. It's the love of your children that keeps you together, and we have to remember that divorce doesn't end parenting. Parenting is a lifelong situation. Even when your children are grown adults, you will be parenting them and caring about them. So their well-being is the mutual connection that you have, and then you want to parent in the best possible way so that your children's lives are as little disrupted as possible.
Making a blended family situation work can also be a challenge. So what tips can you offer for people listening to this podcast that are now in this situation? So what tips can you offer for people to make a blended family work?
Well, blended family is a situation unto itself. It's another facet of co-parenting that's even more complicated, because when you're co-parenting, your focus is on the children that you both had together before the divorce or breakup. When you have a blended family, you were taking two separate families that were uniquely apart, and because of separations and divorce, are now being brought together because the adults want to create a relationship. And the children are inadvertently part of that process. So you are blending whatever number of children are in one family with the number of children in another family. And this takes extreme skill and awareness of communications, understanding the psychology of how children work and behave and act at different ages, and understanding the challenges that children may have about suddenly being thrust into such a different situation, working over the obstacles, trying to be as impartial as possible during the process, and keeping the love bond between the two adults as strong as possible. So that is a very complex situation, but it's doable, and it's happening across our planet in more and more situations.
So I guess what you're saying with both co-parenting and blended families, you have to take things slowly. You have to establish what each problem or issue is, and then slowly work through those problems and issues.
Absolutely. You're right on target. And the most important thing is to be understanding that the focus of your attention is on children who are not adults, children who don't process or understand things the way adults do, children who have their own perceptions of what's happening, their own fears and anxieties, their own preferences, and you are trying to get them to understand and adapt to a situation that they are really victims of. They had no part in the process, and suddenly they are being asked to face a lot of adult life challenges. And so we have to be very, very empathic and compassionate with children in understanding as much as we can life from their perspective.
What tools are available for people to co-parent? When maybe the communication isn't as good as it should be, or there's other issues.
Well, yes, the tools are learning communication skills is essential. Learning how to say what you need to say, learning how to discipline without being disagreeable, learning how to choose your battles with your co-parent so that you're not in a constant process of fighting, learning how to give one or all the children time and attention, which is very difficult, especially in a blended family. One wonderful tool are the online scheduling tools that are available to help make co-parenting an easier process. And so if you put down all the details about the children, regarding their time schedules and their activities and events and school and sports and other activities, as well as when important dates are that they are doing certain things, their birthdays, the size clothes they wear, doctor appointments, etc., and you put them all in a scheduling tool, then it eliminates a lot of the conflict between the parents because a lot doesn't have to be discussed anymore. Both parents can look online, see the exact details. They know when pickup is, they know when deadlines are, they know who's responsible for what. And because of that, they don't have to be talking on the phone and rehashing areas that may be difficult or challenging for them to talk about. So one free tool, for example, is Moiety app, MOIETYAPP.com. And it's free, it's new, and it offers a lot of features that are very simple to use for both co-parents so that they have no excuse for not knowing exactly what's going on and when.
Yes, when you break up with someone and you've got children involved, you really haven't broken up. The breakup isn't final, is it? You still have that connection of the children. You still need to make co-parenting and blended families work. So what happens when parents don't communicate? They don't seem to be able to co-parent in a way that everybody feels that it's working. What are the consequences for those actions?
Well, the funny thing is you don't have to have a divorce or breakup to see those consequences. There are too many families that are intact, but mom and dad don't agree on discipline. They don't agree on nutrition and sport activities and a number of other things. And so there's conflict and fights at home, even if there's no divorce. So the real focus of our attention is on parents understanding that they have to be really good at working things out together in as mature a way as possible, because when you don't, the children are emotionally upset. Children are hurt when they're surrounded by conflict and fighting and anger. And so whether it's in an intact marriage or if it's in a divorce situation or a blended family, the conflict is what hurts children. It frightens them. They feel very insecure. They don't know where to turn when the adults in their life are not acting like adults and aren't making mature decisions. And they're also being poor role models for the children, not showing them ways of handling disagreements. Obviously, we're not going to be in agreement with anyone all the time in our lives. So co-parents have to learn to pick battles, keep the children away from conflict and disagreements when you have them. They have to learn to send very direct messages to one another with as much clarity as possible, which means not putting one another on the defensive, being respectful, and understanding that co-parenting is an ongoing situation, and so the more you do favors for one another and cooperate with one another, the better the outcome is going to be for everyone in the family, because you're going to need help. There's going to be emergencies. There's going to be times when the schedule has to change. And you both need to do that for one another because you are a team working to help raise your children to be responsible, happy adults. So you have to think of yourself as a parenting team, as a co-parent, and not as battling one another. That makes a huge difference. And when co-parents parent as a team, they can get through all the challenges that affect young children, middle school children, high school children, and college, and then adults. And they can be there together to celebrate the happy times, the birthdays, the special holidays and vacations, and awards and rewards, and of course the graduations and the marriages and the birth of grandchildren. All of those life experiences can be shared together. And when co-parents don't do that, they're hurting their children. That's the bottom line that they have to understand.
Rosalind, what are some of the resources that are available to people when they have issues with the other parent?
Well, one thing I highly recommend is bringing in professionals whenever there are issues, because the objective third party, who's a coach, who's a counselor, a therapist, a clergy person, whatever, these are skilled professionals who are familiar with the kinds of conflicts that happen in co-parenting situations and blended family situations. And they are able to be objective and help you come to a resolution, help teach you communication skills so that you don't put each other on the defensive, put each other down, and disrespect one another. And will show strategies and agreements, ways to write things down, and skills to master so that you could eliminate a lot of the hassles that happen. And if you learn them once, it makes a huge difference in the outcome for a long term. So obviously, co-parenting is as complex an issue as can possibly happen in a family. And we want people to understand that it's not about you, it's about making the best decisions for your children. And there's a wonderful question that I always like to share with clients that I coach on this problem because it helps them make better skills. And that question is to ask yourself, would I be making this same parenting decision if we were still married? I'll repeat that. Would I be making this same parenting decision if we were still married? If your answer is colored by the fact that you so dislike your ex that you are doing something that's going to hurt them or sabotage them or annoy them in some way, then you're not coming from a pure parenting place. But if your response is, yes, this is the way I've always felt about this topic, and if we were both married, this is how I'd respond, and so this is what I think is the healthiest for our children, then both of you are going to be much more in alignment in guiding your children, protecting your children, and working with your children for their highest good. And that's what we all want as parents.
That's great advice, Rosalind. Having that third person is such a benefit to people, especially if they are going through conflict. And that particular question is a very good question that we should all ask ourselves with not only co-parenting but other things involved with breakup, because we can be so hurt and so caught up in the pain and wanting to get revenge that we forget about the children, or we forget about how we're thinking, and our thought process is so tainted with this negative vibe that we aren't being really true to ourselves. And if you're not true to yourself and you're not coming from a good place, how can the positives start coming into your life, and how can you begin to move forward in a positive way?
I totally agree. That's well said.
Thank you, Rosalind, for sharing this really important information about co-parenting and blended families and how to think about our children and to put them first. If people want to find out more about what you offer and the resources that you have, where can they find that information?
Yes, I have a website, childcentereddivorce.com, that's filled with resources, information, tips, advice, and programs that I offer. And there's a free ebook on post-divorce parenting, success strategies for getting it right on my home page. You could just enter your email address and it'll be immediately downloaded to you. I also have an audio coaching program with workbook and a co-parenting guidebook that's available digitally downloaded to you so that you can get the step-by-step information, suggestions, advice, guidelines, and tips that'll make life so much more flexible and fluid and workable for the entire family. So all of that is at childcentereddivorce.com.
I also like the book that you have on there, Parenting Beyond Divorce, Making Life Better for You and Your Children.
Thank you. Yes, that's the co-parenting book that I make available, and I think it really makes a big difference for parents having access to that kind of advice and those suggestions.
And also I saw that you have an anger management for co-parents divorce. I think for some people that would be an amazing point of view for them to look at and to maybe learn a lot about how we speak to the other person and maybe the way we come across. We don't think it's aggressive, but the other person thinks it's aggressive.
Yes. When you're having anger issues on either side of the equation, taking this anger management program is so useful because when you learn and understand and can master some of these skills and strategies, it'll stop you in the tracks and keep you from doing the same old thing that's already gotten you into trouble. And so every one of us has to take responsibility for our own behavior. We have to stop pointing the finger and saying, well, my co-parent did this and said that, and I couldn't help but react this way. We have to behave as role models for our children always. And so we can master skills and learn different ways of making suggestions or ways to write down agreements so that we can both look at them and agree to them, and ways of being more flexible, or to choose our battles more wisely to avoid conflict, and using the co-parenting scheduling tools. And there are many strategies that we can implement that'll make a huge difference in the long-term co-parenting success. And, you know, the goal that I have for everyone is for your children, when they're grown adults, to turn to you and say, thank you for doing such a good job despite the divorce. I really appreciate it. That was the greatest blessing in my life when my young adult son came to me and said that. And that's what I want for everyone else, because that's the happy ending we all deserve. And our children deserve that most of all.
Well said, Rosalind. Thank you for once again coming on Breakup Recovery podcast and sharing your practical and useful advice. I'm quite sure that people listening to this podcast have come away with some things that they can think about and maybe put in place, or go to your website and have a look at what you have to offer. So thank you once again, Rosalind, for making the time to come on to Breakup Recovery podcast.
You're so welcome, and I'm also available for one-on-one telephone or Skype coaching. Should anyone want to engage me in that process, I'm always available around the planet. So thank you again, Barbara.
I hope this episode number 089, Tools to Make Co-Parenting and Blended Families Work Successfully After a Breakup, with Rosalind Sadaka, has been helpful in some way. I've put some of the resources like the Moiety app and the contact details for Rosalind in the summary of this episode, so you can go to Rosalind's website and look at the ebooks Rosalind has available. However, if you are still struggling to get over your breakup and feel that you need some assistance and would possibly like to work with me one-on-one, then contact me via my website, barbarastevens.com.au, or message me on my Facebook page. If you found some value from this episode and know someone else who would also find Breakup Recovery podcast useful, then please share the podcast with them. All the episodes are on my website, iTunes, Stitcher and iHeartRadio. Listeners have asked how they can help support the podcast, and Patreon is one way to help. So if you think this show is worth $1 every episode or $1 every month, and you feel that you can afford that amount, and I am grateful for any amount of money you pledge, because every little bit helps, so why not head over to my Patreon page and take a look. The link to that would be www.patreon.com/breakuprecovery. No contribution is too small, and I appreciate your support so that I can improve Breakup Recovery podcast. If you have any suggestions or questions, or just want to email me, then my details are on my website. And the last thing I'd like to say is, be gentle on yourself. You deserve happiness.
If you would like to hear previous Breakup Recovery podcasts, visit barbarastevens.com.au. Connect with Barbara Stevens on social media with Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor on Facebook and at You'll Be Okay on Twitter. Read further blogs, view webinar replays, and download your free ebook, 3 Easy Steps to Surviving Your Breakup, and much more at barbarastevens.com.au.